Hello and welcome. My guest today is David, who had a very interesting near-death experience that he's going to share with us today. David, how are you doing? Thank you for joining me.
Pleasure. I'm good, thanks. Yeah. How are you?
Doing good, doing good.
Good.
You are pretty much free to start at whatever point you think is most relevant to the story and take it from there.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, my story starts at a rail station in Cambridge in the UK. I was seeing a friend off. She was returning to London, and I was helping her onto the car with her bags and everything, and gave her a hug and a kiss to say goodbye. Then the corner of my coat got trapped in the automatic closing doors, and I just couldn't pull it free, I should say. It was jammed right in there. Of course, I tried to take it off, but there was no time. The engine started to rev up, and I thought this doesn't sound too good. And I actually figured at that point that this could be it, that I was going to die. So I had that moment of just actually facing, that life could be all over in a split second, because I knew how fast those trains pull out, and they go even faster when you're connected to the outside. You hear every gear shift and you feel it, and then all of a sudden I was off my feet and I was dragged along the platform and then sucked between the edge of the platform and the speeding train, and I went under the wheels and was just I was just thrown around sort of very violently and relentlessly until I eventually hit the ground, as the train was still continuing on. So there I was just laid in between the tracks, and I just thought, well, it's not over yet. I could get hit by some of the undercarriage of the speeding train. So I just kept my face down into the gravel, and I survived it. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe I was alive because I was conscious throughout the whole ordeal, and I was I went into fight or flight mode as well, and I went and I decided to fight. So I was very sort of tactical, if you like, about everything that I did. I literally remember feeling almost like I was recalling all the action movie scenes that I'd seen, like 007, Indiana Jones, and I'm thinking, what would they do now? Which is crazy because the whole thing did actually take 13 and a half seconds to actually, from the moment my coat got trapped and then me going under. And I know that because the UK Rail Police did a huge inquiry on the whole thing, because I have to, a big accident like that. And I asked them, and it felt like minutes. It felt like it took ages for it all to unfold. And I since found out that that's pretty normal. That happens. I watched a documentary on an American guy called Dr. David Eagleman, who's a brain sort of specialist, and he said that he talks about people like rock climbers when they're just falling off the edge of a cliff and they haven't got any ropes. These free fallers or whatever you call them, and they it's almost like your mind goes into sort of like panoramic view, and time slows down and you've got time to almost decide how you're going to save your own life. So that's what happened to me at that point. So yeah, so I was rushed into hospital. The paramedics were there really quick, and they jumped down on the track, cut through my clothes, and somehow got me into the back of an ambulance. And I remember the guy saying, look, to save your life, we've got a 25-minute drive. Can you hang on? I said, yeah, let's go. So we screamed off down the highway, and I was in total agony. I was losing a lot of blood at this point. And I arrived in the hospital, and there was a whole team of medics waiting there for me. And I remember seeing them all, and I was still in fear because I could hear fear in their voices, and I didn't know what the hell they were talking about because it was all science, and the blood loss was getting pretty bad, and my family arrived. I remember that much, and again, time seemed really strange. So I thought, where did they come from? How did they know? But there they were. My mother was in tears, and anyhow, it was pretty much at that point that I left all the drama of the hospital and all the agony that I was in, and I was suddenly taken from my body, and I was taken into a safe place. It felt safe straight away, and it was a darkened space. And I actually figured that I was dead. I thought, okay, I didn't make it, because I thought I was getting close to the edge as it was, And I didn't fight it. I've since learned through studies of other people who have had near-death experiences that some people try and resist it. They try and come back because they've got too much to live for. They've got kids and stuff, and it's not like I actually wanted to die, but it was such a relief just to be in this moment of peace. So I went with it, and I was greeted by these beautiful orbs of color, which is almost like quite similar to your background you've got at the moment. It was just kind of slowly sort of waving and pulsating all around me. There was like ambers and greens and reds and golds. And that made me feel really comforted. And I tried to get my bearings, and I realized I was no longer laid out on the hospital trolley, but I was on what appeared to be like a huge medieval rock, is the best way to describe it. It was like a big slate rock, and it was incredibly comfortable to actually lay on, which is kind of odd because I also realized I was no longer clothed. I was just covered in like this beautiful satin blue sheet, which was comforting me. And so I laid back my head and I closed my eyes. And as I closed my eyes, I could see through my eyelids that light was getting quite intense, like a bright white light was coming through my eyelids. So I opened my eyes, and there were three symmetrical grids of white light that were closing in on me, basically above my head. And I couldn't take my gaze away from this light because it felt like it was more than just light. It felt like there was a healing force coming from it. And it felt like it was healing all the trauma that my body had just been through, because it had obviously been through a heck of a lot of trauma, And I decided to lay back and enjoy this comforting glow that was coming from these lights. And I suddenly thought, what about my body? Because I knew that my left arm had been cut. It had been cut right open. It had been severed from the elbow down. And so I looked to check, and everything was back in place. Everything was in complete tact. There wasn't even a single scratch or bruise. And so I lay back and closed my eyes for a little while longer. Then I felt the presence of somebody had kind of entered the scene, if you like, and there was just ahead of my feet, there was this beautiful androgynous person, an androgynous being with this kind of white blonde hair and this skin that was glowing light from within. It was just like radiating this lovely sort of hue of white light again, and wearing just a very contemporary, simple black t-shirt, nothing too ethereal, just simple t-shirt. And I knew this person's face, and I knew them as well, but I couldn't fit the place from where. And I said out loud, I said, "Who are you? I know you, don't I? But where do I know you from?" And this person just gazed back at me and smiled with a knowing smile. I knew that smile as well, and didn't say anything. But I felt safe. I knew that I was being guided by this person. That this person was like, if you like, my guardian angel. This is my higher self that was just watching over me, and this is what I was starting to learn, that's what I was looking at here. So that knowledge made me feel that this next stage of life that I'd now entered was a really great place to be, and a very I could trust it totally, without a doubt. So I laid back again and closed my eyes, and I just bathed in this lovely healing white light that was coming on to me. Then I felt the presence of more people had arrived, if you like, and I opened my eyes, and to either side of me there were two female forms. The girl to my right had long brown hair, and she was quite European in appearance, again wearing a very simple long brown dress. And whereas the girl to my left was more Brazilian, Asian, Indian, or American Indian in appearance, and she had like a beautiful sort of white, sort of more traditional outfit on. But basically, what they were doing was they had their hands kind of like going over the contours of my body slowly, almost like a form of Reiki healing, if you like. And it was just like the energy that was coming from their hands was just so beautiful. It was a very strong sort of hum of energy that was just causing every single cell of my body to sort of have this slight vibration, And I realized what was going on here was that they were going beyond just the physical wounds I'd just been experienced. They were now going deeper. They were healing my soul. They were healing all the baggage, as we call it, that I carried over the years. We've all got it. We've all got those wounds that from childhood or whatever, that we carry with us. And I felt like all those layers were just being taken off me one bit by bit as they moved their hands across my body. And I got to the point where I just felt like I was complete, like my whole soul was starting to come alive, and it was starting to open and flower, And I'd never felt like this in the whole of my life, because before all this happened, my life was in a really bad place. I was just about to lose my apartment. I was broke. Things were going really bad for me in my life, and it had been quite a tough call. So to reach this stage for the first time ever, to feel complete and at one with myself, was amazing. And so again, I lay back. It was almost like a sort of a wonderful healing session, and then I suddenly thought about my family, because, as I said earlier, they were there in the hospital, and they were all pretty distraught, of course, by what had happened. And I figured, well, I must be dead now, and they're going to be stood around knowing that fact that I'd gone. So I kind of tried to edge my way over the edge of this huge rock that I was on to try and see them. And as I looked down, I couldn't see them at all. But what I did see was this awesome sight. It was like a huge waterfall of stars, but it was, when I say huge, I mean it was the size, I guess, of Victoria Falls or Niagara Falls. It was just really, really quite massive. And but instead of millions of tons of water pouring over the edge, it was billions of stars cascading over that were all sparkling. And I looked down. I thought, wow, this is remarkable. I thought, of course, I'm not in a small darkened space that I first thought I was. I'm actually in the universe itself, which was an amazing feeling to know that, to feel at one with it. And as I looked down, I could see shooting stars, and I could see, as my eyes kind of got more focused, I was looking from one galaxy into another, basically. I was looking into infinity. I was looking into colors and nebulas. It was just a tremendous sight. So this feeling, that oneness with the universe, was really powerful. And I just edged my way over, and it was quite interesting, because normally I would have been really feeling guilty and worried about the family and thinking, oh my goodness, this is awful. But I had none of that at all. I remember saying to myself, okay, well, I'm going to be seeing them, hopefully, when they step over into this realm. And if I don't, they're going to be enjoying all this beauty. They're going to be going through all this experience themselves, which made me feel fine. But the most profound moment of the whole experience was to come right at the end, and that was it was very powerful, because that feeling of my body sort of feeling this energy of love, unconditional love, going throughout, suddenly became a lot bigger. And I opened my eyes again, and I looked, and just beyond the first being of light that I talked of was a huge tunnel of white light that was coming through the universe, and it was coming closer and closer, and it was like the flames that was slowly rotating all around, that were very powerful. And against this, again, this was really vast. And normally I would have been very quite scared of something like this, because I didn't know what it was. But there was no sense of fear there, and I just felt excitement. And I was being told that it was what I was looking at here was the source of all creation. This was where it all comes from. This is where, this is the core of the universe. This is not the idea of God that I figured God would look like, like the guy on the ceiling of the Vatican in Rome with a long beard. It was, or any human form that most religions follow. This was it. This pure white light coming from this tunnel that was surrounded by flames, and the energy coming from it was just so immense that it just filled me with joy. And it was at that point that I came crashing back into my body, and all the pain came rushing through, and the hospital lights suddenly were fluorescent strip, and it was like, it was just too much to kind of deal with at first. But there I was okay with coming back. It was all right. It wasn't my choice, but immediately I thought, well, why have they sent me back?
Thank you for sharing your experience. I'm curious, when you said you had these beings who were healing you, has your life changed like noticeably since that happened?
Yes, dramatically, I'd say, yeah. Like I said before, things weren't working out for me. Basically, I'd a brief history. I mean, I'd left school without any qualifications because I'm dyslexic, so I'd struggled to sort of, there's a lot of people like me. I realize that a lot of people have got in touch with me and related to my story, and so when you've got no academic qualifications, it's not always that easy to sort of pace your way through life. So I was picking up manual work, doing manual laboring. I wasn't actually that great at that kind of stuff, so so nothing was really going well. The gears were grinding, but all that changed. I suddenly became creative. I suddenly realized the reason I noticed this was because I remember lying in the hospital the very first night when I come around, because they took me into theatre and operated on me afterwards for 8.5 hours. And I was in this room on my own, and it was just me and this little R2D2 machine bleeping next to me. And yeah, of course, I was thinking, wow, what's just happened to me? That the accident. I've just been under a train. That was a huge thing. But all I could think about was this whole other realm that I'd just been to, and how I was going to tell this story. I knew nothing about near-death experiences, so I thought I'm going to paint it. And I decided I'm going to do a huge painting, and it's got to be like the big sort of Renaissance style paintings and all those biblical scenes. It's got to be dramatic like that. And I'd done nothing like that before in my life. So that was the starting point, because when I came out of hospital, I did start that painting, and it started to come together really well, considering I'd got no training to be able to pull this off. And I realized that I was channeling ideas through straight away, as I was starting to put this canvas together. And so, yeah, and it's something we can all do. It's not, and I'm not saying that this is something, that a near-death experience can bring you in, and that's it. I actually try and talk to people about this idea of channeling. It's very simple, and it's something it's a brilliant process. And so obviously from that point on, creativity made me realize that I'd found my true calling, and I was feeling at peace with myself. And so a lot changed. It wasn't all easy, but yeah, but it's been a better way of life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Another thing I was curious about, you mentioned that when you were on the other side, you looked and you were checking your body. So you actually like had a body. Was it like an energy body, or was it like maybe your soul took the form of a body to conform to what you're used to? Or what would you say that was like?
Yeah, I'd say the latter there, that my soul took the form of the body that I'm used to. So it was totally my body. I knew it, as we all know our own bodies. So when I looked at it, I thought, that's actually me that I'm looking at now. But yeah, I guess because I mean, my take on death and everything now is that I realize how strong an entity that the actual soul is, how powerful the soul is, and that death is basically that our physical bodies do die and break down and decay, but the soul continues on. But but in that realm, straight at that very first stage, the near-death experience, what I did see was my body as I would be looking at it at that point. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know why that is, but that's how it was. Yeah.
Did you ever figure out who like all of those beings were? Were they like guardian angels, or maybe just members of your soul family that didn't choose to incarnate? Or what would you say they were?
Yeah, I would say the very first one that greeted me, as I say, that I knew this person really well, but I couldn't pinpoint them. As I also said earlier, that was my higher self. Basically, that is like, this. So that is my guardian angel. That is who's been with me throughout the whole of my life, and is still with me. and I also know that the other two guides are with me as well, because they work with me through emotional tough times or physical tough times, or other things have happened since. But not just that, I go for spiritual healing. I came across that because I wanted to talk about this with people, and I wanted to find out people who might know something about it. And there was a spiritualist church in the town where I was recovering. I recovered at my sister's house where I was staying, and I went to that church, and they said to me, "Look, we do spiritual healing. Would you be interested?" And I said, "I've never heard of it, but yeah, great." Because at that point, physically I was in a bad way. I got sort of all sorts of stuff holding me together, and the spiritual healing was great because not only did it help with the healing process physically, I speed it up at an immense rate. I was going into hospital to see my surgeons, and they were saying, "David, you're healing really fast." And I knew why, because the spiritual healing was helping me. But in those sessions, I knew that the healers that had been healing me on the other side were with me, that were still coming through and still do when I go for spiritual healing. So it's something that's a really beautiful process that I recommend to a lot of people.
Other than creativity, you say that you've come out of this more creative and whatnot. Did you develop any other kind of abilities, like maybe or psychic abilities or anything like that?
Um, I guess so. Yeah. I'm not clairvoyant. That's one thing. I haven't come back with any clairvoyant sort of. But I guess I'm more aware of and stuff. I'm far more attuned with nature. Far more attuned with the earth than what I ever was. I didn't even think about all these things before. And but I also discovered another gift as well that was given to me, which was I started writing music for orchestra, and which is incredible because I've got no formal training whatsoever in being able to write classical music, but I started doing that, and it's a long story how that came about. But I ended up, a lot of synchronicity started to come into my life as well. Like people would cross my path that needed to be there, and I met certain people when I was doing the paintings. That I was given an opportunity to paint above like a yoga Pilates center, and by some friends of my sisters, and they said, "Look, we've got a spare studio." When I was starting the first painting, but it's only out there for a week because we're closed for redecorating. I said, "Sure." But I didn't finish by the end of that week. But they said, "Look, stay with us and we'll just move you around studios." I went, "Great." And I stayed there for 2 years. And in the space of that 2 years, a lot of people coming in used to come up and see my paintings and ask all about it. And one of those people was a cello player in the local orchestra. So when I said I'd started writing music, and I said, "It feels like it should be performed by an orchestra," she said, "Well, maybe we could do it." So all that came together, and an orchestra actually performed my piece. It was premiered to a sellout audience, which was great. Again, more synchronicity happened. The orchestra said, "Would you mind saying a few words to the local press about your piece?" I said, "Sure." And I spoke to the local press, and they said, "Hang on, you're the guy who went under the train, aren't you?" Because and I said, "Yeah, that's right." So this is a great story. It's going on the front cover. Then after that, the BBC contacted me and said, "We want to come and film you in a rehearsal," which was brilliant because it meant that the tickets sold really fast and the whole place was packed. And it wasn't like a sense of like ego, like it was all about me, because it wasn't. It was all about the music and me trying to get across, this is what happened, this is the afterlife, and I tried to get it across in that dimension. So now, my whole life has been based on basically writing music and painting and trying to sort of get as much as I can across to people about the beauty that awaits us all, basically.
Do you have like a website or a Facebook page or anything that where people can see your paintings or hear the music or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. I've got Facebook and Instagram and YouTube channels and stuff. So, but I suppose if you go to the website, which is it's called Shine On the Story, or you can tap in davidditchfield.com, and in fact, and you'll find me there. And then you can, if you want to follow me on social media, you can see what's happening with the next lot of paintings and music as that all unfolds. So yeah, so please do have a look.
Awesome. I will link all that in the description of the video. Before we wrap it up, did you maybe have anything you wanted to say, maybe a positive message to the viewers?
Yeah, I mean, especially at the moment, because for most of us, really, the world is in turmoil, and we're all going through times that are unprecedented. We've just been through COVID now. There's a lot of things that are shaking us up and making us feel very scared, and there's a lot of fear for the future and stuff. And I kind of, one thing I learned when I was in that realm was that I was in the present moment at all times. Before that, I used to worry about all the past constantly, mistakes I'd made, or I worried about the future because I was broke and what was going to happen to me next. In that realm, I didn't care. All I could focus on and enjoy was the present moment. So I tried to say, for everyone that I speak to now, I try to apply it to myself as well, and that is to forget about the past, and that for sure, but also try and forget about the future, because we're all worrying and planning for the future, and every story we put in our head about the future is always going to be worse usually than what it actually is. So try to not create a future, and just focus on the here and now, and look around you, think, okay, I'm all right, I'm safe, I've got food, I'm okay, and try to just enjoy that moment, because the present moment is the one that is the most real thing. It's happening now.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for sharing your experience, and thank you for
Been a pleasure.
the positive message. I am going to go ahead and get out of here, and you have a good day. Okay.
Okay, you